and welcome to the Assistant Practitioner (Health) Programme podcast from the University of Cumbria. What a mouthful. This is our first podcast in our new, very exciting podcast series where we'll be discussing all things university, apprenticeship and, of course, assistant practitioner. We run a 2-year qualification ending in a foundation degree as an apprentice. However, our course is open for non-apprentices in the other 3 countries in the UK. They work at a level between registered healthcare practitioner and support worker in a range of settings and professions. It is not a regulated profession. Our University of Cumbria programme has 5 pathways: health, radiography, OTs, physios and midwiferys. And for all of those, not midwifery, for all of those, you can go on a generic part of the course and then divert off into 3 pathway modules in the first year, 2 pathway modules in the second year to really hone your practice in your field of expertise. We're hoping to release 1 podcast a month on Spotify. The university has a Spotify account. We'll be using a core team of Natalie, Fiona, Ali, that's me, and Steph. Other people will be invited because otherwise you'll be bored, including our students, our lovely students, as guests. I'm Ali Richards. I'm the programme leader for the programme, and I'll just get the rest of the team who are here to introduce themselves.
So my name's Natalie. I am a radiographer by trade and have been with the assistant practitioner team for almost a year now, so time flies when you're having fun. That's me.
And I'm
Hi.
Fiona.
Go, Fiona.
I am a lecturer on the AP programme and I'm a trained assistant practitioner with a degree in health and social care. And I've been with the university for about 2 years.
And I'm Ali Richards. As I said, I'm the programme leader. I'm also a nurse. But although apparently I'm also an honorary radiographer at the moment, simply from the virtue of having worked with radiographers for the last 4 years. So I can talk modalities like it's gone out of fashion. And behind me, you won't be able to see, but I've got a beautiful X-ray of a skyline patella, which is currently my favourite X-ray of all time. So we're going to start today with our first podcast where we're going to talk about the difference between university and school. And the reason that we're doing this as our first podcast is because a lot of our students come from very different backgrounds, but they're backgrounds where they probably never thought they were going to go to university. They're not 18. They tend to be people who are in their 30s, 40s. So they've got caring commitments, other commitments, but they also have issues with all of them apprentices. And so they have issues with work, life, and study. And I think one of the things is the big difference between university and school, from my perspective, and I don't know whether you guys agree with me, is that at university you have to be self-motivated, and a lot of the sort of, I guess, the weight of study comes from you doing it on your own. Although all our students as apprentices get 1 day a week for studying. What do you reckon, guys?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that at school you're taught these generic subjects that you don't really have a lot of choice into, and when you go to university you try and hopefully to study something that you're passionate about and that interests you. But what I think a lot of students struggle with is that the amount of self-directed study that they're expected to do is quite different from school. The amount of outside reading that we expect of our students, because obviously we have such a short amount of time with them, especially teaching on the assistant practitioner programme where they are apprentices and studying 1 day a week. A lot of that study, their education has to come from themselves, and I think that's something that they struggle to comprehend at first when they come to university or the school.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Natalie. Fiona, anything to add?
I agree as well. In school, it's a lot of directed by yourself, isn't it? Well, by the school, and you're told what to learn. We give you ideas at university and you have to go and research further into those to develop things that you like. So although it's different, the independent study can be quite exciting if you find something that you're quite interested in.
It can be quite exciting, or if you're anything like me, you can disappear down thousands of rabbit holes because you go, oh, look, that's shiny, I'll look over there. So one of the things I think that Fiona's highlighted there is that you have to kind of focus on what you're supposed to be studying rather than going, wow, that's really interesting, I'll have a look at that. So I think that's kind of something that you have to start being more disciplined about as well. Natalie, you've been to university. What was your kind of like overriding thing of going to university as opposed to school?
I think when I was at university, I saw it from a different perspective as the student. So I really thought, why am I here? Like I could look up a lot of this online, like, what is the point of this? And especially some of the group work that we had to do, I very much thought like, why am I doing this? What is the point? And you don't always see the reasoning behind it. But I think with group work in particular, it's that learning to articulate yourself in that you're coming across in the conversation where you can reason your points. And I think it's a really good trait to have, especially in my profession. So, being a radiographer, often having to speak to nurses and doctors and people within a multidisciplinary team, it's a really good skill to have. So, even though you might not feel like you're doing, quote, learning, you're learning a skill that is essential to your job role. So I think learning some of the skills that come with university life is really important and not something at the time that you necessarily think about.
Which is a brilliant point. So what you're really saying, Natalie, is you learn how to escalate an issue
Yeah,
instead of just
definitely.
keeping it under your hat and going, oh God, I'm too scared to talk to someone about it.
Yeah, and it's learning to like articulate what you're saying in a way that
Mm,
gets you heard, because if you're in a class and you're trying to get your point across, if you're doing that in an argumentative way, you're not going to get the respect of your peers to put that point across. Whereas if you're doing it in a way where you're arguing your reasoning, you're starting to look at that critical analysis of what you're saying and starting to back up what you're saying with evidence. And that is a crucial part of
mm.
any academic writing or any role that we're teaching people and trying to prepare people for, as you know.
Yeah, no, brilliant point. Fiona, anything to add?
Yeah, I suppose for me, I've been to university for like a long time, probably like the last 10, 15 years I've spent at some form of university. Being a student for me was different. I didn't choose to go off to university for my first degree. I didn't leave home. I just worked and I did my degree and I just carried on as usual, a lot like the apprenticeship. And same with when I did the assistant practitioner program, I was at work full time and doing the things that I had to do at home as well. So I didn't really get the experience of, going out with friends and
Mm,
socializing like a traditional university route, which is similar to some of our assistant practitioners, isn't it? Because they
mm.
might never meet. But I did make a lot of connections across the area that I studied and made a lot of friends that way. So it was good from like a networking point of view. I didn't go out and get drunk like a traditional person at university, but I made friends and I learned how to socialize with people from different professions, which is always useful. And I think as well from a student's point of view, the actual attending university always seemed like it was a really boring thing to do. I'd get into a session and I'd think, why are they teaching me this when we're never going to use this in practice? Who actually cares about this stuff? But then some of the stuff you do come across that is interesting and the way it's taught is interesting. And that to me was a lot more fun when it was interesting. But some stuff you've got to learn because it's part of the program and part of your roles and like as an assistant practitioner in the end, isn't it?
Yeah, it kind of all fits in eventually. It's just like waiting for that magic clink where you
Yeah.
like understand what the hell you're doing and why. I think Fiona said something about learning, and all our students are online. So we do an online program for students all over the country, and there are a lot of differences between all the different students who are all over the country. So I think it's important that we do foster some of that sense of community and those connections, and some of our cohorts are better at it than others, I'd say. Some of them feel it's quite difficult to get them to gel together and to build an online community. That's part of what we do as tutors, but having been to university and never going the normal route, which is so untypical of me, of course, I've done 3 degrees, and all 3 of them I've had very little study time, and I did 1 year of my first degree, which was paid for, where I studied and got my same wage as I would at work and did university terms. And honestly, it was the best year of my life. It was like such good fun to have all those holidays. But I think the issue is that for many people now, university is expensive. You know, my kids have come out with loads and loads of stuff owing because they've taken on debt. And an apprenticeship route is such a great way to go where you don't take on that debt. I think our students are really lucky that they get paid whilst they're working, whilst they're learning. But then on the other side, they've got their lives and studying. And it's about knowing when you apply for the program that you're going to have to do that.
Yeah, I
Should we
agree with that 100%. I started my degree with I think she was about 8 weeks old, baby.
Oh, wow.
And that was like really challenging. So I was trying to juggle, being a mum with a child that would not sleep for England and didn't sleep for about 3 years. That was like really challenging trying to juggle my home life, then my university life, and doing quite big blocks of placement because I did like the traditional undergrad route. So
Mm,
doing blocks of university followed by blocks of a work-based placement. But I kind of felt like I'd been cheated out of the university route because I see like all my peers, maybe going out at a weekend and getting drunk and having, quite long periods of time off university, and I was working so hard. You kind of think, well, that am I getting the university experience? And I think what I've learned in like recent years is that university looks so different for so many people. And for our
mm,
students, particularly when they are doing it work based and they're only in university 1 day a week and that university study is online, it just looks completely different to someone who is maybe a school leaver and they're going out at the weekend and they're enjoying that social time a little bit differently. So I
yeah.
think it's really important to acknowledge that it is different for everybody.
And Fiona, do you think we teach differently from teaching in school as well?
Yeah, so in school, students are given the answer and lots of facts and figures, but in university, we use a range of different teaching methods like class debates or group work, use of PowerPoints and class discussions to explore different topics and let students come to their own conclusions. Sometimes we talk about topics and the theory might be slightly different from what the students are doing in practice, as every person they look after might have different needs. So we need to support the students to explore this in more detail.
Yeah. I mean, you and me both teach subjects where basically, and that's another thing in university, you have subject specialists who are teaching things that they're really passionate about or should be. Natalie tends to teach subjects often, not all the time, but often where there is only one answer. Which is slightly different, isn't it? I mean, ethics, there are
Mm.
loads of answers in ethics and all the things, that we teach around patience and communication. But if Natalie's teaching anatomy, there isn't anything different from a heart. We don't have a different thing. That is how the heart works. The heart works like this. Does that
Yeah.
make it different, do you think, teaching it, Natalie?
Yeah, I think sometimes it can make it a little bit easy because there's no grey area, like, you know, not that what I say goes sort of thing, but what is true with something like anatomy.
Mm,
Although I do quite like teaching some of the areas where there is a little bit of grey area, where you can explore your own points of view on a certain subject. So looking at ethics, my perception of what is ethical will be different than yours, that will be different than Fiona's. And I do quite like
mm,
having that conversations with my students as well because it gives me a different perspective and I learn from that as well. So
yeah.
that learning experience really goes round because you're learning from what other people are saying, and that can be really nice to teach. And I think especially in an online setting like we teach, it's good for building relationships as well because these
Mm,
students don't always have that, peer contact in the same way as your traditional study.
mm. I mean, you teach applied anatomy, which is very much around the conditions that go with it, and we still don't know everything there is to know about a brain, for example.
Yeah,
We
of
we
course.
still
Yeah.
we still don't know why certain cancers happen to certain people. We know some of it, but not all of it. So there's loads still to know, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. And some of my students will come back to me and they'll teach me things about anatomy because it might be that they've known someone with a medical condition or they have that medical condition themselves. So they can give me a different perspective of what it's like to be a patient. And it's really nice when they feel confident enough to share that with the group. It's talking about that, rounded learning experience again and everybody learning from each other that is really nice.
Yeah, it is. It's brilliant.
On that lovely note, we come to the end of our first podcast. Next month, we'll be joined by two of our lovely second year students who are also student reps. They'll be discussing what it means to them to be a student AP and their role as being a student representative. Thank you for listening, and we hope you'll join us all next time.